morning to you out there. The program is The Dailies, where we look at some of the stories that are trending on our papers within the country and also outside the country, if possible. I am Sele Elisha Dasham, and I'll be doing the program alongside Rachel. Good morning.
Good morning, Sele.
How you doing?
I'm fine. How about
How is
you?
the cold?
Sele, I don't want to talk about the cold. I'll get emotional because this cold is not nice at all. But how can we do now? We just have to cope with it.
Very true, very true. And I think this should be for anybody who is living in, just coming in for the first time. It's important that you get something to just keep yourself warm, and then if possible get a face mask. The weather is a bit dusty as well, so I think it's important that we do the right thing. Well, remember, you can join us live on Facebook and on YouTube. We'd love to hear your own views concerning any of the story we will be looking at this morning. And let's go straight into the paper, starting with this day newspaper.
On this day newspaper, African Development Bank ready to disburse $540 million SAPZ funds to states. The writer saying Oyo, Cross River, Kaduna, Imo, Kano, Kwara, Ogun, FCT first set of beneficiaries. And a statement from the Vice President: it's time for government and partners to walk the talk. We're looking forward to that also. Bank directors back CBN's reforms initiative, urge industry compliance. You can find details on page 12. CBN to streamline BDCs for greater efficiency. This is coming from the CBN Governor Cardoso. You can find details on page 8. Buckingham Palace says Britain's King Charles diagnosed with cancer. More details can be found on the front page. The big story on the paper: federal government expresses concern over rising cost of living, protest in Minna. Says situation caused by demand and supply forces. Government looking forward to good harvest that will reduce prices. Yusuf declares Kano people dying of hunger. Bago blames food speculators. Labour Party advises Tinubu to seek help in time. And that's all the news on this day newspaper.
Rachel, I really, I don't know. We're talking about government is looking forward to good harvest that will reduce prices. And I don't know what the government is doing to make sure that we actually have good prices for our goods as well, Rachel. You and I are aware of the crisis that have been going on. Let's come down home. Plateau State, for instance, with the crisis and whatever that happened in Mango Bokos, we know that to some large extent, it has definitely affected the prices of cereals, especially maize, potatoes, and the likes of it that are coming from that part of the country. Now, you remember yesterday we touched a little during our afternoon show where we're looking at the protests that rock Mina. And I've said this, I can't remember how many times, Richard, the fact that Niger is one of those states when you're talking about vast land, like there is land in Niger State. Now you ask question, what is the governor doing to make sure that they utilize this land there in Niger State? Just imagine this vast land we're seeing. For instance, we know that weather is very conducive, for example, for yam. And then we see that they do all that they can to make sure that where there's so much, and then protecting the people and the farmers that are going there to actually farm. Rachel, this is one of the states that, when you're talking about land mass, is the biggest or the largest in the whole of Nigeria. So that is to say that something can come out of there. And this is just one out of many other states that we see that land are wasted. But then are these farmers safe enough to go to the farm? Because we have not grown to that place in the country where we can say we are going totally 100% mechanized farming. If not, I would have said this wouldn't be a big deal to a lot of people, because we know that the machines will do all that is needed, like the way other advanced countries do, where we have robots tilling the land, doing the harvesting and everything. All you have to do is just have one or two remotes to just control it. But we've not gone to that place yet. So if here we are seeing that federal government is expressing concern, I think there's more they can do in terms of beyond just expressing the concern. Here we are seeing the paper here is saying, Shetima is saying that time for government and partners to walk the talk. This should be a time where you should walk the talk as well in relation to that, because the prices of goods and services, Richard, each time you go to the market, you're even afraid. 5,000 naira will not get you anything reasonable, tangible, especially if you have a family. So I'm just hoping that when the government is expressing concern, the people should know that you are expressing concern by putting some modalities in place to make sure that businesses are thriving well. Talking about farmers, they should be able to go to their farm knowing the fact that their lives are secured, and even after planting, they should be sure that no herder somewhere will just come and release their cattle to come destroy their plantation at the end of the day. So look forward to seeing the government do not just express concern with your words, but express your concern with your body language. Let the people of Nigeria know that you have their best interests at heart and that you're planning to do something to make sure that, you know what, finally after the harvest took place since August. So already good, except we're talking about the dry farming, irrigation farming. I think maybe that's the harvest we're looking forward to.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that the government will show their concern by their body language and doing something more effective to follow their words eventually.
When you look at the countries, Sele, that are not struggling with food insecurity like we do, you realize that they are far when it comes to agriculture. They are way ahead of us in technology. Their advancement is just, we are, I can say, light years behind them. I mean, I might over exaggerate it, but that's the gap is that wide. And then for us to get there, I believe first of all is security. You've mentioned that numbers of times, that even if we adopt mechanized farming and then we have access to certain technologies and all of that, people still operate these machines. Meaning that farm, it can't be on autopilot. Those machines can't be on autopilot. Like, there have to be people, be it drones, be it whatever kind of tractor, even the robots are being controlled. Someone needs to change their battery. Someone needs to like control them and
as well.
operate, exactly, sell it, and all of that. There still have to be people on those farmlands, and if those people are not safe, nothing is safe. And let's not forget that the security is not only that the farmers will be killed, is that these machines could be stolen.
Very true.
So it's all kind of security. It can be taken. Even the crops can be stolen, because we're looking at hectares of land, hectares and hectares of land that, you know what, you will be at this end and you can't see the end of it. That is how mechanized farming is. You will need a large space, hectares of just fields, green fields and all of that. And that is where the machine comes in, because if we're talking about Niger State and with that vast land, that is the kind of farming that will be able to solve. It's not carrying farmers to that farm. It will still just be, it will just still be us remaining where we are if we want to reap something from such vast land. So it's security, and then of course investing into different methods of farming, because when you look at our methods of farming, it's still very limited. Plants have evolved, seeds have evolved, different types of fruits and vegetable, how it's being farmed, species, new species are out there that don't take as long as they do to grow and all of that. We still don't have that here. We are still farming in season, and when it's out of season, certain food become expensive, and when it is season, it's out there everywhere, and you're just left to keep eating, for example, sweet potatoes, because it's now available morning, afternoon, night. No, it's not supposed to be like that, because we're supposed to have it from January to December. If only the kind of necessary farming adopted for us to be able to have season in and out of season products like all year round. The bottom line, seller, for me, I believe, is that enough of the government just giving us theories. You know what you're needed, it's expected of you to do. Please do it. Start adopting new strategies for farming. Let's say we are faced with insecurity and we might not be able to, as it is now, do this whole vast land thing because farmers are not safe. What about other methods of farming that will give us more in a small space? This is what people are adopting around the world. That's why I said, when you look at how far advanced people that are not struggling with food security are, you will know that we are very, very behind. And from the look of things, we are still at the place of subsidy for fertilizer. I mean, how long are we going to stay there? We need to advance also when it comes to growth in agriculture. Up till today, the best the government is doing is subsidy in fertilizers, and still, yeah, when it gets to the middleman, someone is selling it and still exploiting farmers.
Very true.
So where are we heading to? So if we are really, really ready to fight food insecurity in this country, we need to take the measures that look like we want to fight food insecurity, and just stop telling people to be patient and to manage, and you're not doing anything. We're exporting things that we're not supposed to be here, and we're importing things.
No, we're not
Imagine,
supposed
Sele,
to
if we
import.
were farming tomatoes in a large capacity, we'll make our tin tomatoes in the country, but we are still importing.
Even though we
Tin
have the one to
tomatoes.
make here, but we've grown to that place where we still feel like consuming foreign goods is
Because
still
when
the
you
best.
taste, when I mean, there's the difference, Sele. You know the difference when it's a foreign product and it's a made, because why? Every other modality to take to that, the government is not even aiding these manufacturers. We see how every day manufacturers are on the paper. So what are we saying? Let the government just do the needful. If not, I don't see anything being put in place so far. Maybe in the nearest future, but as it is now, nothing much is being put in place to make sure that we are not fighting we are not having food insecurity, and that the prices of goods in the market become better eventually.
You know, when I saw the rice pyramid during the Buhari regime, I was excited when they were starting something, because I know that was the time where the borders were closed for bringing in foreign rice and all of that. And I was happy, but the question or the concern was the fact that there was no continuation. There were no modalities to actually make sure that beyond rice, we could have granules, we could have maize, we could have other things and the likes of it. But then, just like you said, we've mentioned part of the things we believe the government can do to aid farmers, to be able to help them, talking about fertilizer, improved seeds and all of that, so that we'll be able, because I mean, there was a time that we're exporting all these things and we're not using the mechanized farming ratio. So what happened to us? So I'm hoping we'll do better. Well, let's take a look at the next paper, which is Daily Independent newspaper. And on Daily Independent newspaper, we have escalating insecurity. Sage Ubani calls for state police and true federalism. Says the current policing structure ineffective and urged the use of drones. Detail of that can be found inside the paper. NAS flay federal government over the rising inflation and threatens street protests. More detail of that can be found inside the paper. Excuse me. And the big story here says Nigeria needs to borrow 21 trillion naira in 2024 to avert bankruptcy. King Charles III diagnosed with cancer. You can find more detail of that international story on page 6. And on basic education, Nigeria experiencing learning crisis. This is coming from the Universal Basic Education Commission. You can find more detail of what they mean by the Nigerian education is actually experiencing learning crisis. Are we talking about we don't have enabling teachers? Are we talking about the curriculum? We just have to look at quite a number of things. So you can do well to grab the paper and read detail of that on page 29. And on tariff hike, exchange rate volatility destroying our business. This is coming from clearing agents. Hard times will soon fade away. This is coming from the First Lady Tinubu. You can find that story on page 29. Senate consider review of custom 5 trillion naira target upward second quarter. AMCOR not planning to liquidate Aero contractors. This is coming from the CEO. And on climate change, NNPC Limited, US Detroit collaborate on greenhouse gas emission reduction from the OML 34. And here we are having Niger resident protest high cost of living and block road. Labour Party asks Tinubu to seek help, says condition unmanageable. You can find that in the paper. And the last story here says police raid kidnappers hideout in FCT and arrest suspect. We're really happy the police could record such success. We look forward to seeing more success being recorded. You can find that story on page 7. We have a picture story on the front page of the paper. You can do well to grab the paper and read any of the story that is of interest to you.
On New Telegraph newspaper, new MPC to focus on price stability and inflation. This is coming from Cardoso, says CBN not responsible for forex crisis to unveil new MPC members. You can start with the story on the front page. Electricity consumers in Nigeria rose to 11.71 million in the third quarter of 2023. This is a report coming from the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics. You can find details on page 25. Why we set up fact-finding team on Plateau killing. This is coming from the Defense Headquarters. And on telecoms, NCC moves to tackle poor network and opaque tariff system. You can find details on page 8. Tributes as veteran artist, poet, playwright Jimmy Solanke dies at 81. You can find details on page 4. The big story on the paper: Nigeria needs third force counterterrorism agency to tackle insecurity. This is from experts, and they are saying Nigerian schools now potential recruiting grounds. Kaduna government blames poverty, unemployment for banditry in the northwest, and a statement from Pan Poultry Industry in Southeast South Zone may become extinct if terrorists bomb TCN's tower along Jos Bauchi transmission line. You can find more details on page 2, 3, 26, and 30. Over 50% certificate of imported pharmaceutical product fake coming from NAFDAC, then it is your job to clean that up. You can find details on page 5. And on economic crisis, Tinubu has run out of ideas, says Labour Party. And on wheat production, Africa hard hit by Ukraine-Russia war, spent 26 billion on importation and others. UBEC seeks solution to Nigeria's learning crisis as UNICEF advocates use of mother tongue. You can find details on page 5. Still on the paper, Kano governor to residents: I will personally report devastating hunger and starvation to Tinubu. The writer is saying Mina residents block road to protest high cost of living, and we have Niger governor blames food hoarders and speculators. Others arrest confiscation of trucks with food items. And the first lady to the governor's wife intensify of effort to ameliorate citizens' suffering to distribute 1.95 million exercise book to students. You can find details on page 3. And we have a study that says compounds in salmon fish could lower cholesterol and heart disease risks. And that's all the news on New Telegraph newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at Nigerian News Direct newspaper. Federal government target all year-round farming to curb food inflation. You can look forward to that story inside the paper. CBN declares $2.4 billion of forex backlog invalid after forensic audit. Benue resident flee as armed men kill 10. We just hope something will be done. Benue is becoming a war zone with bloodshed every day. We hope something will be done about that. You can look forward to that story on page 3. And Lagos Abeokuta Ota Expressway, we are waiting for FEC approval to commence reconstruction. This is coming from Abiodun. And the big story on divestment: failure to domesticate production responsible for hiking drug costs, coming from the federal government, with the writer saying to roll out executive orders to mitigate prices of drugs. More detail found on page 3. DMO offers 2 federal government Nigeria saving bonds for subscription in February. 7 individuals face charges for alleged pipeline tampering in Lagos. You can find that in the paper. We have a picture story where we can see Nasarawa State Governor together with Prince Dabo during a visit in the governor's office in Abeokuta yesterday. You can do well to grab the paper in more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On Nigerian Tribune, 14 passengers in 2 buses traveling to Abuja kidnapped in Kogi State. Entities got more forex allocations than they asked for. CBN governor reveals how federal government can consolidate CBN's reforms to fix forex crisis. Ex-minister, other experts advise. Reps begin sectoral debate on financial sector today. King Charles diagnosed with cancer, and we have folklorist Jimmy Solanke dies at 81. The big story on the paper: high cost of living sparks protests. Residents block road in Mina. Hard times over soon, coming from Remi Tinubu. Poultry farmers lament loss of 33 trillion naira investment to prevailing harsh economy. Full stop: cattle dealers decry multiple taxes on Southeast South roads. Kano governor meets business leaders, promises to meet Tinubu on economic crisis. You can find details on page 8. How I escaped from gunmen who murdered my colleagues. Ekiti traditional ruler is giving his side of the story. Abducted babies sold for 800,000 naira rescued in Lagos State. 4-year-old, several others in critical condition at Lasud after gas explosion. You can find details on page 29, and that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
On the Blueprint newspaper, federal government bans alcoholic beverages in small sachets. You can find detail of that on page 10. And we are having 53% flight delay report worrisome. NCAA vows severe sanction. Super Eagles get CAF $2.5 million for reaching the semi-finals. You can find more detail of that story inside the paper. 8 days after Odudu's takeover, kidnappers swap on 2 buses in Kogi, with the rider saying passengers were about unknown, and then police arrest 6 suspects in Abuja. You can start reading the story on the front page of the paper and continue more on page 8. First Lady pledges 5 million naira each for women farmers to train 2,960. Charges governor's wife to emulate the hardship. You can find more detail of that story in the paper. We're happy the First Lady is doing all she can to actually support her husband to see how they can eradicate the issue of hunger and hardship in the country. We hope that this money gets to the people who are supposed to benefit from this kind gesture. Still on the Blueprint newspaper, Rivers crisis, Fubara loyalists denied bail. Detail found in the paper. EFCC arrests GO over 1.3 billion naira fake grants and money laundering. Detail of that found on page 10. Putting smiles on faces of telecom consumers, my priority, coming from NCC boss Mada. More detail found on page 8. Surpass your 5.079 trillion naira 2024 target. Senate tells custom. You can find that on page 10. We have other stories inside the paper. You can do well to grab the paper and read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On Vanguard newspaper, Nigeria loses 890 billion naira as gas flaring rises 18.9% to 275.2 million SCF. You can find details on page 16. Senate to raise customs 5.079 trillion naira revenue target. And on economic crisis, federal government lacks ideas, should seek help. Cultural icon Jimmy Solanke dies at 82. The big story on the paper, abducted GIGM ABC buses passengers, kidnappers want 15 million naira to free my wife. This is coming from the victim's husband. You can find details on page 7. And on high cost of living, Niger residents protest hunger, shut down major roads. Those behind protests out to hijack food trucks coming to Mina from Lagos, says Governor Bago. NANS seeks Tinubu's intervention, issues ultimatum. Kano governor to intimate Tinubu on hardship, hunger in state. Hard times over soon, First Lady tells Nigerians. We have a column on page 16 by Dakuku, and all that of sports on page 31. History favors Super Eagles over Bafana. Revisit $3.2 billion outcome privatization. Armstrong urges Tinubu. You can find details on page 30, and that's all the news on Vanguard newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at what the next paper, which is the Guardian newspaper, have for us. Building materials labor spike construction cost by 200%. And here we're seeing the price of selected building materials. Here they say the price of essential building material have risen by at least 75,000 in the last 1 year. So you could actually tell how much a bag of cement will cost, how much a trip of sand will cost, gravels, and all of that. No wonder we're seeing, Rachel, that even landlords have increased the rent for tenants, because they will tell you that at least the cost of maintenance and all of that is actually high. But it's really a sad one. You can't help but ask questions. So we keep hearing the prices of things going high. So who is going to build the houses at this point in time? And remember, cement is part of the thing that the border was open to. So I just wonder, I mean, the last time I got to price cement, even though I'm not building a house, I think it was almost 7,000 naira presently, a bag of cement will cost. So you could imagine, Rachel, how much. And then to even make blocks, no wonder people are resolving to even using the clay. But even if you're going to use the clay blocks to build, eventually you need the cement for the plastering and all of that. So there's quite a lot of hardship in the country, Rachel. And I hope that the government are reading, whoever is in media age should be reading and letting the government know that this is what is happening in the country and you truly need to do something. Here we're seeing in other paper you saw the governor of Niger State is saying that the people who started the protest are planning to hijack. I just hope we stop seeing everybody as a threat to the country, because that might not even be it. People are just tired and just tired of what is happening, so they just have to look for a way to let their cry be heard by the government. Because it seems the government don't know what is happening, so maybe a protest will let you know that, you know what, there is a lot of hardship. And I just hope that, yes, we cannot argue the fact that some people might take advantage of this protest and actually hijack it, hoodlums and all of that. But I hope that the government will do their, if you do your own part of the work, there'll be no need for a protest, not to talk of hoodlums hijacking it eventually. So we hope the government will do something, because looking at the prices of everything, so it's not even about the prices of foodstuff anymore, building materials, everything, drugs, just mention it, Richard, everything has skyrocketed in the market. So we hope the government will really pay attention to the plight of people and do what is expected of them to do presently.
I mean, Tella, when we talk about protest, when we started seeing that of Mina yesterday, I clearly remember saying that we have a Nigerian government that don't like protest. And to hear such a statement coming from the governor of Niger State, it just proves the fact that we have a government that doesn't want to work and don't want people to complain about it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with a protest. And you can't, okay, when you say people want to come out and hijack it, then the question you're supposed to ask yourself is the reason behind the protest true or false? If it's true, then they're not out there to hijack trucks of food. They are out there to say their problem. But when I create a problem that is not existing, then it means I have an ulterior motive towards what I want to do. Then perhaps they're just creating a problem where there is no problem, probably yes, to block the roads and then to hijack the food trucks. But it is a problem, and these people are crying and lamenting of a situation that is not only in Nigeria but all across Nigeria, and you are so negative about it and just trying, yes, there will always be people that will try to hijack it. We've seen that. But who are the organizations in your state that are coming out for these protests? Are they thieves? Because protest is not just people that just come out. It's always under one body or another. Exactly, that come out. Are they thieves? Do they plan on, why haven't they hijacked it since? If I'm going to hijack a truck of food, am I going to come out and protest? I will just do it the criminal way and we move. But these people are out showing their faces, because they didn't go out masked, showing their faces and crying to tell you that, you know what, I am a citizen of Nigeria, this is my face, this is what I'm going through. And then you want to start tagging them as criminals. And I keep saying, until we start changing the narrative, this is where we know if our government is heading towards growth or not. We can talk about the same thing when it comes to security, until we stop calling it a farmer-header clash and call it what it is. Until we change the narrative and stop calling it what it is, we will not solve insecurity. The same thing, when you don't stop calling people who go out for protest as criminal, or try to, the next thing is you will see security personnel shooting at unarmed people, you know, firing at people who are holding placards. And even if they are holding stick, you cannot shoot a person that is holding a stick, even if it is a stone. You're not supposed to shoot back at somebody holding a stone. Those two weapons is not a threat to you. A stone cannot be a threat to you. Exactly. Until we start changing the narrative, until we have a government that's willing to listen and stop tagging people who come out to say their voice as criminal, I don't think we have a government that wants to grow. And this is what I'm looking forward to see out of our government, and listen and act, rather than just trying to beat around the bush. Is either you call them criminal, or is either you don't call the situation as it is, just to allow things to just be swept under the carpet, and then this situation keeps facing us and confronting us every single day.
Of course, Rachel, we hope to see better approach coming from our government. Still on the Guardian newspaper, hoodlums disrupt Fubara Supreme Court victory celebration. The combined detail of that on page 7. FCCPC forms as loan app violate regulation amid rising payment defaults. I think we talked about that a couple of weeks back. You can do well to read more detail of that on page 15. Women farmers to get 5 million naira each from Remi Tinubu, detailed on page 30. EFCC arrests pastor over 1.3 billion naira fake grants and money laundering. Also here we're seeing refrain from wild celebration if super. All right, I take that story again. Refrain from wild celebration if South Africa loses, Nigerian High Commission warns. And I wonder, why is that, Rachel? Is our celebration a threat to South Africa? Because here we're seeing that this warning was given to Nigerians who are actually living in South Africa. The fact that if Nigeria should actually win the match tomorrow, they should. Is it curtail their way of celebration?
I think the warning is important because nobody, I mean, it's too early for us to forget about the xenophobic attacks that we had in the past. And yes, if you're in South Africa, don't over-jubilate, please, for the sake of your life.
Is that supposed to be the approach?
It's not, but then what else can we do than just to say,
just be on the safer side.
Exactly, just to be on the safer side. And even us here, we should not go on social media and just try to rub it up, because there will be a ripple effect elsewhere and you might not be the one feeling it and all of that. I just believe it's just because of what happened in the past. And when you look at the nature of what happened, what was the reason behind the attack? So imagine another attack springing up and you wonder, what was the reason behind? I'm talk more of now, it's football. It puts people together and it also breaks people apart or something like that. So yes, it's okay. It's sad that we have to come down to this. But just whatever it takes to just keep a Nigerian safe in whatever part of the world, I think is okay.
Well, Richard, the truth is that we cannot help it. I mean, we are happy. I remember the football between Angola and that of Ghana. We've seen the way social media was about it, putting on. I mean, I just don't want to mention all the things I saw on social media, but then nevertheless, it's just a spirit of sports, and nothing more. But you're right, actually, just to keep them safe over there. Well, we keep our fingers crossed to see how the march will turn out tomorrow. Still on the Guardian newspaper, we have poor citizen protests, high cost of living and hardship in Mina and Osun State. NAFDA says over 50% of imported pharmaceutical certificates are fake, and we hope they look forward to all of these fake pharmaceutical people that are having this fake certificate and all of that. You can find more of that on page 30, and that's all on the Guardian newspaper. But before we move further with other paper review, we'd love to take a break, let you chew the story. What do you have to say about the protests in Niger State? What do you also have to say about even that of the football match between the Super Eagles and South Africa tomorrow? So quite a number of stories on the paper. We'd love to hear your own views. Remember, you can drop it on Facebook and on YouTube as well. Let's take this break. When we come back, we continue with the paper analysis.
Make your everyday informative, make your everyday count. Know your world, daily affairs, national and international, with authentic news events as they unfold on Global News and Zuma Nigeria, Monday to Friday at 1 p.m.
Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, it's still the Dailies. We have been looking at a number of stories on the paper, and we'd love to hear your own views. So remember, you can actually, drop it on Facebook and on YouTube, and then we'll just take them and then see what they do. I'm still Stella Elisha Dasham, and I still have Rachel Tansy with me. Thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome, Sarah.
All right, let's take a look at the next paper, which is the Nation newspaper.
On the Nation newspaper, Oyo Kaduna Cross Rivers to share $540 million African Development Fund. And on Ondo Edo 2024, 9 PDP aspirants reject delegate election, 9 polling officials missing, and APC prunes aspirants to 4. You can find details on page 5. Jimmy Sri Lanka dies at 81. Supply hitches disrupt petrol distribution in Lagos. Federal government offers 2 bonds. You can find details of this story on page 3 and 7. NCC security operatives working to tackle challenges. This is concerning insecurity. The big story on the paper, EFCC freezes 3 billion naira traced to Sirika's brother's account. Ex-minister civil servant sibling failed to execute 8.06 billion naira contracts. You can start with the details on the front page. Forex reforms attracting FDI, says Cardoso. Protest rocks Mina, governor, people mopping up food items to create scarcity. And at the downside of the paper, King Charles diagnosed with cancer, Navy arrests Spain-bound stowaways, and you can find the details on page 5, and that's all the news on the Nation newspaper.
On the Punch newspaper, Nigerians seek relief as state get 3.3 trillion naira allocations, where we have the writer Fleda story says, protesters lament rising inflation, governors rally federal government to avert food crisis. State local government to receive 3.3 trillion naira July to December. Quality of life degenerating, residents say, detail found on page 2 and 21. Senate to raise custom 5 trillion naira revenue target, detail found on page 29. And there is a statement coming from the Punch concerning the CBN story. You can do us read more detail of what that story is about on page 8. Tinubu Abiodun more as Jimmy Solanke dies at 81. Still on the Punch newspaper, Naira weakens at parallel market, rise at official window. You can find out on page 26. Police come Kogi forest as gunmen abduct 14 Abuja born travelers. You can find that inside the paper. And we're still having that of the cancer. Biden, Suka, and world leaders sympathize with King Charles. You can find more detail of that story inside the paper, and that's all on the Punch newspaper.
On the Metric newspaper on climate change, NNPCL U.S. Deloitte partner on greenhouse emission reduction from OML 34. You can start with the details on the front page. Amusan Toby breaks 60-meter hurdle record. African Development Bank to begin disbursement of $540 million SAPZ fund. Oyo Kaduna Cross River to benefit from first phase. The big story on the paper, the Cardoso's expose, reveals how forensic audit by Deloitte unveiled monumental fraud in FX market, confirms NNPCL other NDAs moving their funds to CBN, says this will reduce volatility. Amid free fall, Cardoso says Naira undervalued, promises stability as reforms are implemented. You can find details on page 2. Obi charges federal government to tackle corruption and reward hard work. Data protection revenue hit 6.2 billion naira in 2023. It was undervalued, MultiChoice tells Canal Plus after rejecting $2.5 billion acquisition offer. You can find details on page 11. King Charles III diagnosed with cancer, says Buckingham Palace. Still on the paper, police arrest Buhari Mohammed, wanted kidnapping orders in Abuja hotel. Dwindling income, Senate knows increasing customs revenue target. And then we have a picture story where we can see the vice president boosting food security in Nigeria. And that's all the news on the Matrix newspaper.
On First News newspaper, hard times over, soon First Lady assures Nigerians, detail found in the paper. And NAFDAC enforces ban on alcoholic drinks in sachet. Explosion rats 3-story building injures child grandparents in Lagos. EFCC arrests General Overseer over 1.3 billion naira fraud data found in the paper. Nigeria and 17 other countries not qualify for 2025 US lottery program. The big story on the paper, how we uncovered $2.4 billion fraud in Forex claim. Coming from the CBN governor, says Forex backlog not valid, drops. Our hard to embrace reform will eventually make Nigeria, make the Naira stable. Our hard to embrace reform will eventually make Naira stable, coming from the CBN. Also, we have pre-election. APC proves 29 Edo Guba aspirants to 4. You can find more detail in the paper. And we have TCN supplies 2,686.135 megawatts to 11 discos after restoring grid. Federal government finally bans alcoholic beverages in small sachets. You can find that. I think that will help to control the number of people who abuse alcohol on a daily basis, and also to make it very difficult for people to afford it as well. Niger resident protest high costs of food and living. You can find detail of that in the paper. We have the picture story here. You can draw out to grab the paper, read more detail of any other story that is of interest to you.
On Leadership newspaper, kidnappers hijacked 2 Abuja-bound buses in Kogi State. Trending, Niger residents protest high cost of living and on numbers 146 billion naira required for Marina shorelines repairs. You can find details on page 2. 15.9 million students spend 159 billion naira on mobile data monthly. You can find details of this report on page 7. CSOs to EFCC name those laundering money for terrorists. We are also waiting for this information. You can find details on page 7. And the big story on the paper, in West Africa, food cheapest in Nigeria despite compliance. This is a statement coming from governors, and this is the kind of statement I don't want to listen. Walk and stop comparing us with other African countries. We are supposed to be far better, not only in Africa, but in the world when it comes to food. Looking at the resources we have, looking at the wealth we have, looking at our vital grounds. We are not supposed to sit down and no, we are supposed to have a measure of rice, 100 naira. If it's nothing like that, then you're not doing well. Whether we have other African countries that are performing, we don't want that kind of comparison. What we want to know is that our naira is gaining value, and as it is now, is depreciating. We don't want to hear whether Kenya, a measure of rice there is 5,000 naira. No, we don't want that. We don't want to hear that. It's what is working for us as against the currency we are trading and buying, and that is the dollar, against the consumption system that we have rather than production, against all the resources that illegal mining is eating, against terrorism and insecurity and everything that is facing, that is confronting us and making food price, against subsidy removal, against our refiners that are not working, seller. We don't want to see this kind of comparison. We don't want it, because it's not the first time we see comparisons such as our fuel pump price is one of the cheapest in the world. No, we don't want to hear that. Seller, I'm becoming speechless. It's not about it being cheapest in the world. It's if the citizens can afford it. Do you understand? For those countries that is expensive, the citizens can afford it because their GDP per capita is high. But even if ours is the cheapest and we still cannot afford it, then it only tells you that we are poor. We are poor. And why do you keep doing this comparison when it only reveals that we are poor? If it's the cheapest and yet your citizens cannot afford it, then it means we are poor. That's what it says. So what are you trying to say to make us feel better? Because it only says we are poor. And I don't want this comparison. It gets someone emotional.
Which already you
Stop
are, Rachel.
wasting your time on comparison and do your work. All those times that you spend doing statistics and comparing whether food is better or fuel pump price is better in another country. We don't want that kind of statistics. It's what is obtainable in our country. That is what we want. The report we want to hear you telling us is that by December 2024, we will be seeing dollar as against the naira as against the dollar at 500 naira. Please spend your time on those kind of research and statistics, and then we will clap hands for you. But this report or research doesn't make us feel any better. It tells us we are poor. If it's the cheapest and yet we cannot afford it, it tells us that we are poor. So in the places that is expensive and they are able to afford it, it means they have money. It means that the citizens are doing well. It says we are poor. So I just hope that we stop seeing this kind of comparison, Sele, because it's not nice at
Of
all.
course, Richard, I could actually feel your pain and the reason why you get so, or you got so emotional, because I mean it's annoying sometimes, or you just wonder what is the yardstick they actually use to measure this. Now, you made mention of the fact that Nigerians cannot afford it, that makes it that we are poor. Now, we cannot afford it, we cannot even access it in the first place. Okay, we've been talking about the fact that if our inflation presently, if only to remain the way it is, I think Nigerians will feel better. Because if it's just the way it is, and then the government is putting modalities and other things in place to make sure that, you know what, let us make sure that we guarantee safety of our farmers going to the farm, so that we can actually have rice at cheapest, even if let's start from 500 naira, because right now rice is over 1,000 naira or so. There was a time where local rice was as cheap as 400, 500, and then the foreign rice was like 600, 700. There was a time like that. I could talk about transportation, Richard. In less than a year, you and I know how much your transport is. It has become not just twice the price. It's like more than 3 to 4 times the price of what you were. I mean, there was a time I could actually use 200 naira to and from and still have a change. But reverse is the case right now. I need about 500 just a day. There are people who spend 1.5 depending on where you are living in the country. So the fact that you feel that it is a cheaper doesn't make it better. It doesn't even make Nigerians feel that it's okay. I'm going to say this to people in Niger State that protested yesterday. Believe me, if we have a governor saying this to them at that time, you will not like the body language coming from them, because you can actually trigger something that was not supposed to be there in the first place. So just like you mentioned, this will not make it any better. Rather than comparing, let us look into what can we do. What are some of the measures we're putting in place? In my own state, what do you think is the food that you can actually make accessible? However, I think that will make people to feel better. Say, you know what, our governors are working. The fact that you're feeding on taxpayers' money doesn't mean that these taxpayers are not feeling the pain. So I hope that our governors will look at it from that point of view.
Still on Leadership newspaper, World Cancer Day, federal government plans 6 more treatment centers. Bukar Abba Ibrahim buried in Mecca. Alcon decay, a wake-up call for government action. Pharmacists blame high cost of drugs on diesel and forex. You can find details on page 7. And then we have a picture story showing residents of Niger State protesting the high cost of living in Minna, the state capital. This happened yesterday, and that's all the news on Leadership newspaper.
All right, let's close it up with a Business Day newspaper. Domestic fuel supply unlikely to tame the rising FS. You can find more of that on page 30. Lingering court cases limit Nigeria's oil sector prospect. Old problems in power sector keep Nigerians in darkness. We hope that we'll be able to address those old problems. CBN sets side on outstanding $2.2 billion forex backlog. You can find more detail of that. We have a picture story here where we can see one of the son of the soil during the Grammy Award in Los Angeles. You can do well to grab the paper, read detail of any other story that is of interest to you. And that's how far we can go on the program this morning. Thank you, Rachel, for doing this with me. And thank you also to our supporters. Thank you to our viewers for making us a part of your morning. Until we come your way tomorrow, do have a blessed day ahead.